The highlight of any good online MBA program is the capstone project that requires MBA students to use the knowledge and research skills they have gained over their entire MBA experience to solve a real-world business problem at strategic level. For that reason, a team of us at the University of Memphis online MBA program are presenting a turnaround strategy proposal for BlackBerry, formerly known as Research in Motion, as our capstone project. This strategy presentation includes our research findings on background and history of BlackBerry, strategic issues that are facing BlackBerry, scope and root causes for the issues, our proposals for turnaround solutions, and a short summary. How many of us still remember the Crackberry days when a BlackBerry was a must-have for corporate professionals? How many of us are still using a BlackBerry phone today? What a change! And how many of us foresaw this coming? The BlackBerry story is a prime example of how a company and technology can emerge as a wonderful disruptive innovation and gain market dominance, but eventually fall behind and become nearly obsolete. What went wrong? What can we do to turn it around? The rise and fall of BlackBerry is so evident from Research in Motion's sales history. From the early 2000s to the late 2000s, RIM went through a very successful market penetration stage with launches of several BlackBerry models, including the famous BlackBerry Bold, which I personally used for a long time. Starting from the late 2000s, troubling signs started to show when Android and iPhones started taking market shares away. In 2013, RIM was clearly in a survival mode. How many of us really paid attention to its launching of the Z10 model in 2013? Today, competition in the smartphone market is getting even fiercer. How many of us have heard Xiaomi from China? What should RIM do to turn it around? In this presentation, we will propose our findings and recommendations. In order to develop a viable turnaround strategy, we need to understand today's smartphone market. This latest market study by Nielsen clearly indicates BlackBerry's near obsolete position. We will further discuss causes for BlackBerry's current position in the market by understanding phone functionality, user demographics, and preferences.
As we take a look at BlackBerry, we have determined that their decline and mere survival can be attributed to a culture shift within the industry. The mobile telecommunications market is no longer driven by business solutions, but rather driven by the needs of the end consumer. The issues facing BlackBerry can be attributed and broken down into three distinct issues they are facing: financial issues, operational issues, and tactical issues. BlackBerry has continuously considered themselves the business solution for the mobile telecommunications market. From 2003 until 2011, BlackBerry boasted considerable quarterly increases in revenues that made the mobile telecommunications company look like an industry giant. At their peak in 2011, BlackBerry posted quarterly revenues of over $5 billion. However, since then, the industry giant has fallen flat on its face. In the fourth quarter of 2014, they did not even reach $1 billion in the quarterly revenue mark. One can only see that over the same time period that service revenues per account have drastically declined as well, which is in a direct correlation to their falling revenues. Adding to the difficulties facing BlackBerry over the recent years is their decline in accounts. I'm sure everyone remembers the term Crackberry and how the company name BlackBerry almost became a noun with its interchangeable use to referring to one's phones. One can see by looking at this graph that the market was not far off base from those references. At its peak, BlackBerry had more than 80 million accounts, and that took almost 10 years to build. However, over the last several years, this number has dropped below 50 million and is declining faster than it rose. Like revenues can be attributed to falling account revenues, declining phone sales can be attributed to the declining customer accounts. BlackBerry is in an identity crisis, and they need to figure out how to appeal to the mass market. Finally, we'll talk about the tactical issues. The mobile telecommunications environment is now driven by the consumer. They are the ones driving what is brought to the market by the hardware and software developers in the industry. Consumers want their lives, and yes, every aspect of their lives, from tracking daily steps to reading the morning news, at their fingertips. However, BlackBerry has been unable to capture this market that has been dominated by Apple and Android over the recent years. It's been recent decisions by Zheng, BlackBerry's CEO, to go after the enterprise market and make BlackBerry the choice of big business and government for their mobile telecommunications solutions.
Now let's examine the scope of the problem, the cultural shift in corporate America, and the rise of BYOD. BlackBerry was the first device to captivate the heart of corporate America. It was the first line of devices designed with the focus of appealing to the corporate sector as opposed to consumers. Prior to the birth of the iPhone and Android, BlackBerry had a strong position within the smartphone industry, accounting for 21% of market share in 2009. It dominated the market for a significant period of time, as it was the only device that could instantaneously deliver email while providing superior security and manageability features. Business owners and IT teams were in love with their devices. So were all the BlackBerry users who could be more productive in the workplace on and off the clock. Consequently, BlackBerry had a commanding share and owned the corporate market. Corporations were the leading buyers of their devices. But this corporate dominance would ultimately lead the company to its demise. The company relied heavily on selling to corporate IT buyers and locking them up with long-term contracts and server-based solutions. Once iPhone and Android entered the market and were proven enterprise devices able to run business apps, there was a cultural shift in corporate America. Rather than dictating one-size-fits-all technology choices, as previously done, many organizations began to allow their users to select the platform they preferred, or simply adopted a bring-your-own-device policy that let users connect their personal smartphones to company email and network resources. CEOs and business leaders were acquiring sophisticated smartphones and tablets, and they wanted them to integrate with their company's network. This proved that the choice and style were equally important to employees who wanted to use the latest technology. As a result, employees began to select devices that satisfied both their personal and professional needs. So guess what they chose? iPhones and Android smartphones. Not BlackBerry. This shift led to the decline of BlackBerry, as the mobile industry had evolved to be much more consumer-driven, and until recently, BlackBerry devices had not offered the features that consumers were looking for, such as touchscreens. BlackBerry insisted on creating phones with full keyboards, and even after it became evident that consumers preferred touchscreens, which allowed for better video viewing and touchscreen navigation. When BlackBerry finally listened to consumers and launched a touchscreen device, it was seen as a poor imitation of the iPhone. BlackBerry perceived its devices as fancy, email-enabled mobile phones. On the contrary, Apple and Google envisioned powerful mobile computers and worked to make sending email and browsing the web as consumer-friendly as possible. Despite the strength of BlackBerry's position in the enterprise sector, there are powerful trends moving against it. Initially, BlackBerry's brand was built using the momentum from corporate America, which trickled down into the hands of consumers. But now, due to the BYOB movement, we are seeing a new trend, where technology first emerges in the consumer market and later spreads into business. This phenomenon is known as consumerization of IT. If BlackBerry is unable to win customers based on the strength of its brand with consumers, then it's going to have to compete based on its strength as a device for enterprise users and the fact that it offers superior security. However, based off this new trend, it is vital that BlackBerry finds a way to satisfy the needs of consumers and professionals alike. As more companies and IT departments support consumerization of IT approach, in which consumers ultimately dictate which device will be used in an organization, it will be imperative for them to figure out a way to resonate with the consumer sector. If not, BlackBerry will continue to lose ground within the enterprise sector, which is currently the only thing keeping the company afloat.
BlackBerry's management has been in denial for a long time. Over the last 5 years, the company has seen both its market cap and annual sales revenue decline at historic rates. Since 2011, BlackBerry has seen its market cap drop from $7.7 billion to $5.7 billion as of February 2015. The sales and revenue have also seen a drop from $20.3 billion in 2011 to a low of $3.8 billion as of February 2015. BlackBerry initially built a platform for corporations and governments to allow them to send email and instant messages within secure networks. The issue was that BlackBerry focused too long on only selling to corporate IT departments and tying them to long-term contracts that kept them from shifting to other device manufacturers. BlackBerry also kept their app ecosystem closed and didn't allow other developers to develop apps like the Apple or Android did, which kept them from having volume and variety of apps that users continued to demand for their smartphones. BlackBerry tried to chase the non-corporate consumers, but they had inferior devices without touchscreens, their screens were small in comparison, they had slow browsers, and limited apps due to their closed ecosystem. While BlackBerry was chasing non-corporate consumers, Apple's iOS and Android devices were developing security and manageability software to allow them to serve the corporate market. With all the consumer features, corporations started to let users bring Apple and other Android devices onto corporate networks. BYOD, Bring Your Own Device. Bring Your Own Device, which started in the mid-2000s, is fully helping companies to give their employees the option to use a device of their choice, but still manage security for email and calendars. Smartphones have allowed corporate America to better manage user preferences and provide secure remote access for the ever-changing business landscape.
Underestimating the demand for BYOD was certainly a factor that led to RIM's drop in market share and fall from relevance, but this was not the lone factor. There was also an underestimation for the potential of smartphones, the iPhone specifically, an unwillingness to adapt and change, and a delayed response to market share loss. RIM's first failure post-iPhone was on behalf of CEO Mike Lazardis, assuming that the extent of the iPhone's potential was as a toy for entertainment purposes. He publicly balked at the idea of using a glass screen for typing purposes over the RIM's QWERTY keyboard. He also criticized the poor battery life as impractical. Lazardis was caught by a state of bewilderment, saying that he did not understand how AT&T would allow a mobile device with complete web browsing capability. He believed it would collapse the network and would result in a failed release of the iPhone device. In mid-2007, RIM was approached by Verizon Wireless, who was frozen out of the smartphone market by AT&T at the time, and asked them to develop an iPhone killer device. The product created was BlackBerry Storm. It was an ambitious undertaking and forced the company to work with technology they had previously no experience with. The product was released months past target in the fall of 2008. The phone was reviewed as awkward, slow, and buggy. The Storm ran on a single processor compared to iPhone's dual processor and 700 megabytes of memory. The performance of the phone led to high product returns. The failure of the Storm forced Verizon to turn to Motorola and its Google Android operating system. rather than compete directly with iPhone. And the Motorola Droid claimed its market share from Palm, Microsoft, and RIM. By the end of 2010, Android's market had improved by 23.5% in 1 year, while RIM dropped by 10 points that same year. By late 2011, RIM had decreased in market share to 16%. RIM executives assumed it had time to adapt and alter the technological DNA of its company. RIM assumed that Apple's aggressive negotiating would discourage cellular carriers, and assumed that iPhone could not sway the most loyal customers in its business and government entities. RIM did not believe it was ignoring customer demand. It believed it knew what the customers needed better than the customers themselves. RIM argues that a faster browser would just lead to discouraging overage charges by the carrier, and that a large touchscreen would result in loss of battery power midway through the workday. RIM was correct on both counts, but what they underestimated was the ability of consumer demand to drive innovation and alter the business models of major service carriers. The proposed solution to market share loss was the BlackBerry 10 operating system. BB10 was originally set to launch in 2011, but was delayed to 2013. The BlackBerry 10 mobile OS was released finally in 2013. However, by this time, the Apple iOS was into its 6th generation of product development, and the Microsoft Windows Phone was on its 3rd generation. The release of BB10 was followed shortly by the Z10, which was poorly received by customers who were accustomed to Android and Apple platforms. The result was a surplus in unsold handsets, accounting to $930 million in working capital that could not be moved. In the years between the release of the iPhone and iOS and the release of BB10, consumer interest had shifted from security to battery life. Consumers now wanted applications. App developers found it more difficult to comply with RIM's technically complicated Java-based system as opposed to those of Apple iOS and Android. BlackBerry also exerted control over app developers, which was found creatively stifling. The result was being passed over by developers of in-demand applications, such as Instagram and Tumblr.
When it comes to product design, BlackBerry has some major competition. Not only do they need to focus on the hardware that they develop, but they need to focus on the underlying software as well. As said multiple times throughout this presentation, BlackBerry has two major competitors, Apple and Android. First, let's take a focus on Apple. For the past several years, they've been the prom queen in the mobile telecommunications market when it comes to hardware and software. Back in November, they released the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus. However, it's not that device which has made them successful. Their success began with the iPod. This relatively simple and today's standard design has carved the way for mobile devices today. The iPad has led now to 10 iPhone designs over a 6-generation span. The simplistic and functional designs of the hardware have led to a seamless transition between products for the consumer, making them very brand loyal. However, it's not just been their sleek hardware designs that have made them a success. Sticking with their simplistic designs, they have changed very little about the layout of their operating system, and this has carved the path for hundreds of thousands of consumer-driven apps to be created and made available on the Apple Store. Although Android is the operating system, the name speaks to much more. When focusing on what they have done right, we look at the Samsung Galaxy line, which is one of Apple and BlackBerry's main competitions. The Galaxy line has stayed true to its designs over the years, like the iPhone, and has for the most part only gotten larger, which is what the market seems to want. Android, similar to Apple, has focused their success on the back end, the operating system. With 9 different operating systems over its lifespan, Android has evolved with what the consumer wants, and now has over 200,000 apps available on their store. BlackBerry's taken a much different path over the years than Apple and Android. From their fruitful beginnings to today, BlackBerry's never had a consistent product design. They have QWERTY keyboard designs to small cell phones with numbered letters to touchscreen disasters. All in all, their product failures have come from inconsistency. Just in this picture alone, there are 30 different phone models with similar but inconsistent designs, and this doesn't even account for all the designs they've had over the years. BlackBerry needs to go simple. They need to focus on the consumer. That first means focus on the operating system for which they plan to implement. It needs to be user-friendly and offer what the consumer wants, access to their life within their hand. Next, they need to focus on the hardware. Sleek, simple designs are what the consumer seems to want. Just look at the designs of the iPhone 6 and Samsung Galaxy S. They're not overly complicated. They're sleek and simple. Finally, with the iOS operating system and the Android operating system, BlackBerry needs to ensure their functionality brings about the requested for apps. Apps are what keep the consumer happy, and if you can provide what they need, BlackBerry might have a chance to rebound.
BlackBerry World online app store is pretty boring. There are much fewer choices than the Google or Android Play Store. There is a huge lack of brand recognition. There are very little descriptions of the apps, no user reviews, and a significant portion of the apps must be purchased for a charge. 4 of the newer BlackBerry devices do come with links to the Amazon App Store, which helps the consumer with familiarity and more options, although not all Amazon apps are compatible. Regardless of how advanced a smartphone you offer, attempting to sell a device without apps that the everyday user desires is like trying to sell a fancy gun that nobody makes bullets for. It's seen as useless. One way, and I think BlackBerry is hinting they recognize this by offering apps through Amazon, is that for them to be competitive is through partnership. While this is a start, not all applications offered through Amazon are BlackBerry compatible. Also, most apps come at a price. One of the major draws of HTC and Samsung have always been the extensive choices that users can get for free. For some, it's a perk that seals the deal. In terms of software available from BlackBerry, the choices are also limited. These 3, Link, Blend, and BES12, are the most prevalent. Link is simply another version of Cloud. Blend allows users to mirror their mobile phone with any laptop, tablet, or both, and is compatible with various programs. This would be a motivating sales point to potential new customers for a BlackBerry device. BES12, BlackBerry Enterprise Services, allows businesses to link all of the bring your own devices of their employees under one secure network and eliminate the need for a user to retain numerous passwords and user IDs. Although Link seems like a duplicate to many products that users can get for free, other BlackBerry software could help them grow their market share. Blend gives them a new way to relate to consumer needs, both professional and non, in a way that they have failed in the past. However, they are not effectively marketing to inform those potential buyers about their products. Their focus has been to lock in already loyal BlackBerry users with upgrades and contracts. With the loss of popularity they have endured is very poor strategy. BES12 would help smooth the cracks of employees using different types of devices to do the same activities, while giving the added bonus of ensured security. Again, though, this might be good for software sales, but it doesn't yield new device customers necessarily. So now that BlackBerry is attempting to think outside the box, how do they turn it into market gain and profit? For businesses, BES 12 is a good idea. Security is key in most businesses for many reasons. It would be attractive to new customers because it allows associates already in a BYOB agreement that enjoys or is tied into contracts with another device to continue their use, yet optimize streamlining and security. While this in itself doesn't sell more BlackBerry devices, it does get them an in or new connection. Then, by offering outstanding customer service, helping the businesses get the most out of their software service, then the business will be more interested in seeing what else they have to offer. Bundle packages and contracts, perhaps after a trial period, will get new users hooked. For individual consumers, Blend is also nearly universally compatible with other types of devices, laptops and tablets, giving them a broader consumer base. In order to capitalize on this, BlackBerry should stop investing in waste of time initiatives like Link and start tapping into free resources that most tech-savvy individuals already utilize, like Google or MS Live, that help them stay connected on whatever type of device they are using, and instead enhance ease of use for programs like that. Marketing will absolutely be instrumental. If you don't know these products exist, how would you buy them? Chance? Bad strategy. Trial discount periods among perhaps students or certain associate groups would give potential new loyal customers the chance to try it out without locking them in, which sets positive light on company as being customer focused, and if they like what they're using, you get automatic free word of mouth marketing. Especially with the power of social media, this can have a big impact. Commercials on radio, internet radio, TV, YouTube, movies, celebrity testimonials perhaps, would also all be an essential piece as well.
When choosing the right market segments for a successful turnaround for BlackBerry, we must consider the following factors. Is the segment large enough? Is the segment showing signs of growth? Does BlackBerry have the necessary skills and knowledge to serve this segment? We have discussed the trend of bringing your own device in today's enterprise markets. It's quite clear that the lines between personal and businesses are getting blurred. McKinsey presented a conceptual segmentation based on amounts of data and voice usages. Consumers who use the most data and voice are classified as omnivores, who likely blend work and personal uses on mobile devices. This group accounts for less than 10% of the user population, but with 30% of voice and more than 50% of data usages. Similarly, experience marketing services segments U.S. smartphone owners into 7 groups, ranging from the hyper-connected prodigies to the low-usage talkers. Each group is unique in its own right, presenting marketers with different opportunities to target and engage them. It's apparent that in order for the turnaround strategy to be successful, BlackBerry needs to focus on the market segments and user groups where data usages are high and consumer blend work and personal uses. When selecting the right set markets, we also need to take considerations of price and functional factors in the smartphone market. As recently published by the Wall Street Journal, average prices for smartphones without wireless contracts can be separated into 2 groups, with Apple commanding premium prices and Android and emerging brands such as Xiaomi being price competitive. The price gap between the 2 tiers is in the range of $400. If new BlackBerry devices can successfully accommodate personal and work uses, the price range it competes should be somewhere in between those of Android and Apple devices. Another recent research study based on user preference clearly indicates consumer preference of mobile performance where users focus on the system, the keyboard, and the screen. The other group to target is called Brand Functional Group, where users emphasize on brand type and phone performance. With BlackBerry's reputation in the enterprise market, along with newly developed functions to accommodate personal uses, these two segments are the proper targets for a successful turnaround.
File sharing is the practice of distributing or providing access to digital media, such as computer programs, multimedia, such as audio, images, and video, documents, or electronic books. BlackBerry's music files are based on MP3 technology. BlackBerry should develop technology to allow its devices to read multiple music file types outside of the MP3 format. If BlackBerry doesn't broaden its music media format, users will continue to keep their iPhones and Android devices as long as they can't utilize the hundreds of dollars that they have spent on music in other music formats other than MP3. At a minimum, BlackBerry should develop a conversion software that is free to BlackBerry device owners, as BlackBerry device owners are getting tired of having to purchase third-party software to convert other music file types to MP3 so they can be played on their BlackBerry devices. At the end, it may be more cost-effective for users to convert back or stay with Apple or Android devices if the MP3 technology doesn't change.
We have previously discussed the trend of consumerization of IT, which means that consumers ultimately dictate the type of devices used in an organization. As a result of this rising trend, it is imperative for BlackBerry to create devices that are more appealing to the mature consumer sector, if they want to regain the enterprise market share. In order to achieve this, BlackBerry needs to take a step back and understand how consumers are utilizing their smartphones on a daily basis. Some of the factors they must consider are what activities are taking place on smartphones and what functions are being utilized the most on these devices. Studies show that consumers use smartphones for 3.5 hours per day, but only spend 25% of that time on communication. So what are consumers doing on their smartphones, you may be asking? Well, let's take a look. Consumers use their smartphones for a wide variety of activities and tasks. This graph depicts the activities of U.S. smartphone owners and the percent of total daily smartphone time they spend on the activities. As you can see, the three most popular activities for smartphones are email, web browsing, and Facebook. Now let's examine how consumers are utilizing their smartphones based off functionality alone. As you can see, the number one function used by consumers are apps, followed by text messaging and browsing the web, with the top three apps in 2014 being Google Search, Facebook, and YouTube. This definitely presents a problem for BlackBerry, as their current Achilles heel is the lack of popular apps within the app market. So now let's examine what's keeping iOS and Android users glued to their smartphones. As you can see, 86% of iOS and Android users are spending time on apps alone, while the other 14% of their time is spent browsing the web. 32% of their time is actually spent on game apps alone. So what kind of apps are capturing the attention of consumers the most? Well, let's take a look. When looking at the type of apps that are competing for mobile users' attention span, social networking and search still rule, as people spend nearly 11 hours per month on average accessing these apps. Entertainment views, including video, audio, and game apps, grew 71% among mobile users over that prior year. So what's the problem? Well, based off these findings, it is apparent that apps are one of the determining factors for consumers when choosing a smartphone device. However, this topic of app remains the Achilles heel for BlackBerry devices. The issue is not the lack of apps, but the lack of quality apps that consumers really want. Consumers are turned away from BlackBerry because their favorite apps are missing, and companies aren't making the apps because the devices aren't selling. Now it's 2015, and the BlackBerry world still lacks popular apps such as Instagram, Google Hangouts, and Netflix. So, what's the solution? Well, in order to compete with the iOS and Android app markets, And to capture more of the consumer market share, BlackBerry has to figure out a way to attract and retain better developers. In the past, BlackBerry has struggled a great deal in this department due to their company culture and organizational weaknesses. In the past, BlackBerry has treated developers like contractors, simply hired to provide a service while adhering to strict parameters. However, this type of culture is quite the opposite of what program developers actually wanted, and iOS and Android understood that. They treated their developers like partners, just as they had done with the creative segment of their combined business models. Developers seek companies that allow them to have the freedom of expression in open source. In order to attract developers and secure exclusive and revolutionary apps, BlackBerry is in need of a paradigm shift to share creative control.
During this presentation, you have heard the BlackBerry dilemma. Now, in conclusion, we will briefly recap what the issue is, the scope, why the problems exist, and suggestions proposed as possible strategies for improvement. Over the past 20 years or so, BlackBerry went from the first company to unveil the smartphone to gaining staggering market dominance, to finally struggling to survive. Apple and Android have come onto the scene as fierce competitors, continuing to evolve and improve their products to meet consumer wants. Personal and professional lines have begun to blend, making consumer demands more diverse. Now, BlackBerry retains only 1.2% of smartphone market share. There has truly been a huge technological cultural shift. While BlackBerry came out with the smartphone for businesses and workers to become more productive, it quickly became a consumer's market. People wanted a phone they could use for work, but would meet every aspect of their personal digital desires as well. Operationally, they peaked at 50 million accounts over 10 years of growth, and in 3 years they lost nearly half. Their tactic has been to focus on growth through business accounts primarily, and it has not worked well for them. BlackBerry's strategy was quite successful in the beginning. Their goal was to take the popular cellular device and expand it from a phone into a secure device that allowed a few business applications and primarily email management. This was popular with corporations as it enabled associates to become more mobile and still stay very connected to their staff, their managers, and their clients. This helped to maximize organization and timeliness of communication. The BlackBerry was meant for business, i.e., necessity, and not for fun. As smartphones become more and more popular with the release of the touchscreen, Apple and Android devices that allowed for easy internet browsing and endless applications and game choices, people began investing in personal smartphones. Businesses recognized that it would be wise to allow associates to use their own devices for personal and professional use. With that came the consumerization of IT and the trickle of technology beginning in the corporate realm into the personal arena was reversed, and BlackBerry lost the hold that they had on the corporate market, leaving them struggling to continue. As discussed, the bring your own device movement leading to consumerization of IT had a huge impact. Then compound that with BlackBerry's unwillingness to collaborate. Their closed ecosystem left them far behind on development and choices for applications. Their devices were inferior. While they may have been more secure at the time, the internet was slower, the screens were smaller, and users wanted touchscreens. They were so focused on the wrong things, corporate contracts and tying in already loyal customers, and simply improving their old format, which was clunky and slower. They were in denial about what was happening. Leaders felt that other brands were working to release products that were impractical. Yet meanwhile, their competitors were prepping their products to make them more secure and meet corporate needs. BlackBerry got so far behind on innovation that it would take a miracle for them to catch up. Currently, their position is weak at best. We've discussed how one goes from being the market giant to diminishing quickly, and also what will be key for recovery. BlackBerry must be open to understanding what the customer really wants and striving to develop along those lines. They must define their target market to give them a realistic goal. Product development must not only be focused on user-friendly hardware, but also on a faster, more efficient operating system. They must be willing to work with others to bring in the quality and quantity of improvements and additions they need. They must market their software that could be useful to potential new customers, and they must get apps that have brand familiarity. People do not want to lose money or the future enjoyment spent on their favorite music downloaded in non-compatible formats. BlackBerry will have to open itself up to accepting more file types. As you see here, John Chen, the company's new CEO, is hopeful and energetic regarding the future of BlackBerry. He has been quoted as saying, "The future of profit is lying with software and enterprise development." Under positive leadership and with the possible strategies mentioned here, is it possible to gain back the lost ground? With consumers upgrading on an 18-month to 2-year average and the number of smartphone users out there, maybe it is possible. It is important, however, to keep in mind, people don't know what you don't tell them. So if BlackBerry intends to recover, product development must go hand in hand with strategic marketing.